realize what part of our culture or what part of our heritage are worth saving. What can we or what part of our memory should we forget? What memories do we enjoy? What memories brings us regret? What memories offer us to learn lessons from? These are some of the questions that a cultural worker may ponder upon, especially when considering which heritage is worth saving and letting go. Now, when we talk of cultural heritage, there are two classifications, major classifications. We have the tangible and the intangible cultural heritage. The tangible cultural heritage, as defined by the UNESCO, refers to physical artifacts produced, maintained, and transmitted intergenerationally in a society. This includes artistic creations, built heritage, such as buildings and monuments, and other physical or tangible products of human creativity that are invested with cultural and significance in a society. Tangible heritage are further classified into two. We have the movable heritage and the immovable heritage. Movable heritage are those that could be transferred from one location to another. For example, we have sculptures, paintings, coins, manuscripts, and mementos. These are some examples of movable cultural heritage. However, due to its fragility, care should be greatly considered when one tries to move an item from one place to another, especially if the item is already old and its features already fragile. Immovable cultural heritage, on the other hand, are structures that are fixed on the ground. These could be buildings, houses, bridges, churches, monuments, archaeological sites, and so on. Now on the slide, you will see here some immovable cultural heritage that are found in the province of Capiz. Like for example, we have here the statue of President Manuel Rojas at the heart of the Rojas City Plaza, the Torre ni Bobby in the municipality of Cuartero, which was built sometime in the early 1960s, the Spanish Ark at the heart of the Banica Cemetery. Now, behind the Spanish Ark is also a cultural property, a valuable immovable cultural property, which is the Campo Santo, which was also built during the Spanish period. And then we also have here the Bahay na Bato of Eleuterio Acuña, which served as the birthplace of President Manuel Rojas. And of course, we have here the imposing Rojas City Bridge, which was built sometime in 1913. Now, the second classification of cultural heritage is intangible heritage. When we talk of intangible, we don't, that's why we call it intangible, because we don't see it, but we feel it. Now, the manifestation of intangible heritage are tangible heritage. Now, examples of intangible heritage, the UNESCO, by the way, defines intangible heritage as oral and intangible heritage as the totality of tradition-based creations of a cultural community expressed by a group of individuals and recognized as reflecting the aspirations, expectations, and experiences of a community insofar that they reflect their cultural and social identity. Its standards and values are transmitted orally. It could also be transmitted through imitation, or it could be transmitted by way of writing. Although in the previous generations, most often than not, intangible cultural heritage were basically transmitted orally. Now, there are 5 major categories of intangible heritage. These are oral traditions and expressions, performing arts, social practices and festive events, knowledge and practices concerning nature and the universe, and traditional craftsmanship. Some good examples of intangible heritage include traditional healing practices. Now, here in Capiz, I think we're all familiar of such traditional healing practices like the hilot, the luya-luya, the batakdungan, and the buok. So these are some of traditional healing practices that are intangible and might as well, most probably, have been passed on from one generation to another. And I think a lot of us, until now, I believe, a lot of us until now still consult traditional healers when it comes to our health and wellness. Now, another good example of intangible heritage is our religious beliefs and practices. We have traditions of Holy Week tradition is a good example of religious activities. And they usually include the lukay-lukay, the practice of lukay-lukay, the considerad, which is being practiced in the town of Panay, here in Capiz. We have our processions. We have our passion. We also have the sinaculo. Another intangible heritage is our traditional fishing methods and practices. Now, there are different ways to catch fish or to harvest fish. And when we documented traditional fishing methods way back in 2018, we were able to record 52 traditional fishing methods in certain coastal communities in the province of Capiz. So we discovered such traditional fishing methods like pataba, the use of arong, pamunit, pamintol, and so on and so forth. We also have, I think this is very evident in our culture, our oral literature, such as epics, legends, folktales, the hurubatun or proverbs. Now on the slide, you will see the Sugidanon epics, which comprise 10 epics of the Panay Bukidnon community, documented, transcribed, and translated by Dr. Alicia Magos. Now, before Dr. Magos, we have the Hinilawod, which is also an epic of Panay Island. Now, one who wants to study the oral literature of the Philippines may start by consulting the works of the famous Damiana Eugenio. Now, Professor Eugenio collected, transcribed, and translated a lot of oral literature around the Philippines, and she was able to compile it in different books. Now, I have shown here 3 of her books. We have Philippine myths, proverbs, and legends, but I think she has 6 books about Philippine oral literature. And I think if you want to delve deeper into our oral literature as a Filipino nation, her book is a good starting point to read. Now, another part of our cultural heritage are festivals. Of course, I have here the Ati-Atihan and the Dinagyang Festival. But a lot of every community in the Philippines surely has festivals that have had generations of origins and may have also a folkloric origin or historical origins as well. Of course, let's not forget our food culture. Okay. Now, here in Capiz, aside from our famous seafood, of course, we have a lot of scrumptious delicacies and cuisines found in every town and community in the province. I could name some, but the list could go on, such as the lauya in Partero, the tinoom in Sigma, the binakol, the pinaisan, the lamayu, the inubaran, and many more. And I think a lot of us here could share our traditional cuisines in our respective communities as well. Now, the impetus towards the preservation of cultural heritage gained stronger footing with the implementation, the passage, of course, of several cultural heritage laws. Of course, the fount of cultural heritage preservation could be found nowhere else but in our Philippine Constitution. It's stipulated in Article 14 of the 1987 Constitution. Furthermore, thanks a lot to our culturally responsive lawmakers, the Philippines was able to pass several legislations pertaining to cultural heritage. So I have here some, but the list could go on. These are the most essential cultural heritage laws, I think. So we have here Republic Act 7356 in 1992, which is the NCCA Act, which created the National Commission for Culture and the Arts. Prior to that, NCCA was called the Presidential Commission for Culture and the Arts, attached to the office of the president. However, there were claimors and, of course, requests on the part of the artists that arts and culture should be depoliticized, should be free from politics. That is why the NCCA was created. Now, the NCCA has its own governing body. Its governing body, which is the Board of Commissioners, headed by the chairperson, is democratically elected by members of several committees. Now, I could name one committee, which is the National Committee for Libraries and Information Services. Now, the members of the NCLIS elect the Executive Committee, which in turn elects the Commissioner for the Cultural Heritage, I think. And then this Board of Commissioners choose who among them sit as the chairman of the NCCA. Now we also have, what else do we have here? Yes, we have Republic Act 10-0. I think we should all be familiar of this. Republic Act 10-066, passed in 2009, signed into law by President Gloria Macapagal-Arroyo in 2010. The National Heritage Act is the Philippine law that created the Philippine Registry of Cultural Property, and it is also the law that provides for the preservation of our cultural heritage. In 2018, we saw the passage of Republic Act 11194, otherwise known as the Gabaldon Building Act. This act mandates the conservation of Gabaldon school buildings nationwide and provides also for penalties for the violations and the appropriations for the restoration of all Gabaldon buildings. Now, if you're from Capiz and you see a lot of Gabaldon buildings around the province being habitated and restored back to its original look, that's because of Republic Act 11194. Then we also have Republic Act 1133, otherwise known as the National Museum Act. This was passed, I think, in 2018. This is the act that strengthened the National Museum of the Philippines, and it repealed the original charter of the National Museum, 8492. Now, we also have Republic Act 10-0086. Para na akong abogado nito. Republic Act 10-0086, otherwise known as the act that strengthened the people's nationalism through the Philippine History Act. I think this is also the Republic Act that transformed the Philippine Historical Institute into the National Historical NHP, National Historical Commission of the Philippines, from the previous National Historical Institute. Now we also have Republic Act 9470, which established which is called the National Archives of the Philippines Act of 2007. And we also have Republic Act 7794, passed in 1994, which is the act that provided for the establishment of congressional, city, municipal libraries, and barangay reading centers throughout the Philippines. Now, if you're from the LGU and you're looking for legal backing or legal basis for the creation of a barangay reading center, try to consult Republic Act 7743. And of course, for us librarians, this is very important. We have Republic Act 10-0087 passed in 2010, which is otherwise known as the National Library of the Philippines Act. Now let's go to National Heritage Act of 2009, otherwise known as RA 10066. Now the Republic Act aims to protect, preserve, conserve, and promote the nation's cultural heritage, its property and histories, and the ethnicity of local communities. And one of its mandates is also to establish and strengthen cultural institutions and protect cultural workers and ensure their professional development and well-being. Now, another provision of the Republic Act is the establishment of cultural agencies to safeguard our heritage. Now, according to Article 8, Section 3 of RA 10066, there are 6 attached cultural agencies to the NCCA, and each agency is tasked to take care of cultural heritage that fall under the jurisdiction of this agency. First off, we have the Cultural Center of the Philippines, which is in charge of significant cultural property pertaining to the performing arts. So when it comes to performing arts, that's the jurisdiction of the CCP. The National Archives of the Philippines takes charge of maintaining and preserving significant archival materials. For example, if you're looking for copies of your elecciones de pueblos, if you're writing if you're starting to write the local history of your town, most probably you could consult the National Archives of the Philippines. Now, the National Library of the Philippines is responsible for rare and significant contemporary Philippine books and manuscripts, which include presidential papers, periodicals, newspapers, singly or in collection, and libraries and electronic records. The National Historical Institute of the Philippines, on the other hand, is mandated to protect significant movable and immovable cultural property that pertains to Philippine history, Philippine heroes, and the conservation of historical artifacts. The National Museum of the Philippines, on the other hand, has the responsibility for significant movable and immovable cultural and natural property pertaining to collections of fine arts, archaeology, anthropology, botany, geology, zoology, and astronomy, including its conservation aspect. The National Museum of the Philippines now has a regional branch here in Western Visayas. It's in Iloilo City. And of course, for our language, we have the Commission sa Wikang Filipino, which is in charge of disseminating, developing, and promoting the Filipino language, as well as conserving ethnic languages. Now, one of the provisions of RA 10066 is the establishment of the Philippine Registry of Cultural Property, also known as the PCAP. Now, this serves as a database or a repository of all information pertaining to cultural properties in the Philippines deemed significant in our cultural heritage. Now, there are several classifications of a cultural heritage. I think the most significant of them is the UNESCO World Heritage Site. This is international in scope because it is the UNESCO that enlists a certain heritage site to be included in its list. Now, what qualifies a heritage site to be included in the World Heritage Site? Well, definitely, it should have an outstanding universal value. For example, the Baroque churches of the Philippines, and here in Panay Island, we are very blessed to have the Miagao Church in Iloilo, which is one of the Baroque churches of the Philippines. As such, it is included in the list of UNESCO World Heritage Sites. Also, the city of Vigan is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, as well as the rice terraces in the Cordillera Administrative Region. Next off is the National Cultural Treasure, which is unique, which is considered as a unique cultural property and is found locally, and a heritage site qualifies to be a national cultural treasure for its outstanding historical, cultural, artistic, and or scientific value. It is highly significant and important to the nation, and it should have been declared by the cultural agency such as the National Museum. Now we have here some examples of our national cultural treasures. Here in the province of Capiz, we have the Panay Church, which houses the biggest Catholic church bell in Asia. And also in Iloilo, we have the Santa Barbara Church in the town of Santa Barbara. In Mindanao, we have the epic, the Maranao epic called the Darangen, which is also a national cultural treasure. And we have the Fort Pilar in Zamboanga City, which is also included in the list. Then we also have important cultural properties. These are heritage sites or properties with exceptional cultural, artistic, and historical significance in the Philippines. Now, a property could be an important cultural property if it was determined by the National Museum, the National Historical Commission of the Philippines, the National Library for books and manuscripts, and the National Archives for manuscripts. Now, in Panay Island, we have a good example with the Aniniit Church in Aniniit, Antique. And also we have the imposing old town hall in Iloilo City, or the old city hall of Iloilo City, which is now part of the University of the Philippines, Visayas, Iloilo City campus. In Negros Occidental, I would like to cite the Bernardino Halandoni Ancestral House, or the Pink Mansion. This I've been here. It's in the downtown Silay area, and also another house, heritage house there, is the Manuel Severino Hofilenia Heritage House, also in Silay, which are considered as important cultural property. Another classification of a heritage site is the National Historical Shrine. Now, these are cultural property which are hallowed or sacred and revered for their history or association as declared and identified by the NHCP and other cultural agencies. Some examples of national historical shrines include the Aguinaldo Shrine in Kawit, Cavite, of course. This is the residence of President Emilio Aguinaldo, where he raised the Philippine flag. And then another one is the Rizal Shrine in Rizal Park and Shrine in Dapitan, which was established by Dr. Jose Rizal. So this is also a national historical shrine. Some shrines as well include the Mactan Shrine, the Rizal Park, and the Rizal Shrine in Calamba, Laguna. Now, national historical landmarks are sites or structures that are associated with events or achievements significant to Philippine history as identified and declared by the National Historical Commission of the Philippines. Now, examples, here in Capiz, we have the birthplace of President Manuel A. Rojas, which is the home of her grandfather, Don Eleuterio Acuña. And then we also have the monument of President Manuel Rojas at the heart of the Rojas City Plaza. And of course, for our educational institution, we have the Philomer Christian University, which also has a national historical landmark. And the Capiz Provincial Capital has also been given most recently by the NHCP with a historical landmark. Now, what if you identified a cultural property in your locality? It is a cultural property, but it was not identified on the previous 6 classifications of cultural property. Is it still a cultural property? Is it still worth preserving? Yes, because it falls under the presumed important cultural property of the Philippines. Now, whether or not the NHCP, the NM, National Library, or National Archive has declared such as a cultural property, it is still presumed as a cultural property if it is a work of Agawad Manlilikha ng Bayan or the Gamaba awardee, if it is a work of the national artist. So for example, in your house, probably you have a painting by a national artist which was not yet declared with the National Museum. Still, it is a presumed important cultural property. Also, archaeological sites and traditional ethnographic materials, works of national heroes. For example, we have the bibliographic cards of Jose Rizal, but I think it's already a national cultural treasure. Original manuscripts, for example, of national artists such as Magdalena Halandoni. No? Mark structures, unless declared by the NHCP. Now, here's a more important thing. No? If your ancestral house is 50 years old, or at least 50 years old, it could be a presumed important cultural property. Or there's a building in your city or town, or if there's a school building there that is 50 years old and above, no? And then, of course, archival materials or old documents dating at least 50 years old, unless declared by the National Archives. It falls under the presumed cultural property, such as these. No? This could be presumed cultural properties, even if they were not declared as such properties. No? Local important cultural properties are also well, the LGU is also empowered to declare heritage sites within their jurisdiction as cultural heritage. And they are called local important cultural properties because they are declared when they are declared by the Sangguniang Bayan. So they become part of the local historical or cultural heritage of a given locality. Now, librarians could also, cultural heritage advocacy for librarians. Now, librarians may take up cultural advocacy as a cause by librarians and libraries, and they may integrate this in their programs and services. Now, we're talking about libraries as advocates of heritage preservation and conservation. Now, heritage advocacy involves the protection and preservation of our built heritage, cultural and historical sites and settings, upholding Philippine Constitution that heritage and culture should be developed and preserved for our national identity. This is according to the Heritage Conservation Society of the Philippines. Now, heritage advocacy aims to create awareness for the protection, preservation, and promotion of Philippine cultural, historical, religious, and natural heritage. Now, librarians are essential cultural institutions. As such, aside from usual services mandated of a library, such as provisions for collection development and acquisitions, cataloging and classification, user education, digital literacy, reference servicing, a culturally responsive component may also be integrated in our services. Now, integrating cultural heritage advocacy for libraries and services may be done in one way or another. For example, we may integrate cultural heritage in our collection development. One of the mandates of a library is to supply relevant and, if possible, up-to-date reference materials for its readership. Advocating cultural heritage in the collection development may be as simple as acquiring locally published materials or books and publications that talk about local history, culture, and traditional knowledge systems and practices. In Western Visayas, for example, we have the Kasing-Kasing Press, which is based in Guimaras and operates regionally as a publishing house that offers books and reading materials that libraries may acquire to spread awareness on the importance of local literature in society and make reading materials written in the mother tongue available to the reading public. Acquiring locally published materials and literature in the local context or written in mother tongue also help decolonize the library's literature, humanities, and history collection, oftentimes flooded by foreign titles and authors. Now, the existence of a Filipiniana, Rizaliana, or local studies collection is a good start. For example, we have here the Panayana collection of the University of San Agustin. Now, the University of San Agustin in Iloilo City was founded in 1904 by Spanish missionaries and is now the oldest university in Western Visayas. Its Panayana collection is a repository of rich materials published in gray literature alike. Most of this collection are locally published materials about the history of the different municipalities of the province of Iloilo, the provinces of Capiz, Aklan, Antique, Guimaras, and Negros. Since the institution was founded by Augustinian friars, the collection also holds copies of the works of Spanish friars and historians. In developing this collection, partnership with the community is a huge boost for these efforts. Now, last February, the municipality of Cuartero launched Balay Mapanag, which is the Cuartero Municipal Library, Museum, and Archives. The success of this dynamic cultural space in this town, in the province of Capiz, depended largely on the strong bayanihan spirit. In this town where everyone knows everybody, where your neighbor is a distant kin or a close relative, where the municipal tourism office called for families to donate or loan family items with cultural or historical connection with the municipality, reading materials and mementos with local significance. Then one by one, members of the community came out and did their share of building up the town's collection. Now, provision for access and support to researchers may also consider these activities as interest for research on local history and culture is gaining ground. A library may find itself as a relevant go-to destination for reference research. The library's network may be tapped for interlibrary loans. Simply easing access or making access less stringent, especially on local materials, once inaccessible to outsiders, is a huge help. Launching of mobile libraries to make the collection available to far-flung communities who could not go to the library located in the pueblo or in the town proper or in the city proper is not just an act of humanity, but also a great service to the community towards the achievement of literacy. Now, allow me to cite the example of the Capiz Provincial Library, as shown on the slide here, whose mobile libraries have made several trips to different municipalities in the different parts of the province. They use open spaces such as parks, public spaces, plazas as spaces for reading, storytelling, and interaction, of course, but with restrictions due as well to COVID-19. Now, the availability of this mobile library wherever they went attracted the attention of people from all walks of life, especially children and children at heart who love to read. Now, I know a lot of public libraries in the Philippines also do this, even during this pandemic. And again, this is a great service to humanity to allow readers to have access to quality reading materials. The preparation of reference guides, pathfinders, and annotated bibliographies may also be considered as a way for provision on access and support to researchers. Now, most recently, there are two researchers from Central Philippine University who have finished compiling an annotated bibliography on local histories, literature, and knowledge systems and practices of Panay Island. These materials will be made available to different libraries in the region so that researchers looking for relevant local study sources may find it easier to locate and access these materials. Now, another endeavor that libraries may take to promote cultural literacy is awareness raising. While many of us tend to disregard awareness raising as a very basic activity, it is usually a difficult thing to do actually, because it involves convincing the public and changing popular perceptions. In the end, when a community has interests in their own culture and heritage, and this far outweighs earlier challenges. Awareness raising could involve simple things that we could do every day or integrate in our tasks, such as social media campaign, especially if we have staff that are social media savvy, to organizing webinars, workshops, such as what we do right now. We also opt for exhibitions, especially if we have space. Although this time, we may just suffice for web-based exhibitions. Now, allow me to cite this example um, from Central Philippine University, Henry Luce III Library, and other libraries in Western Visayas. Now, last year, when we began to move forward after schools and libraries were shut because of the lockdown restrictions, Western Visayas libraries, one by one, started to introduce virtual, call this chatbot. I know libraries in the Philippines have already their own chatbots. Now, these virtual reference assistants or VRAs, in fact, serve as cultural advocacy tools for library because each chatbot is named Bertha. Now, Bertha was named after Anna Bertha Cougar, the first American librarian who served in Philippine University from 1910 to 1914. West Visayas State University's chatbot, on the other hand, is named Graciano, after the foremost Ilonggo hero, Graciano Lopez Jaina, whose name was also lent on the building where the university's library is now being housed. Capiz State University Pontevedra campus, meanwhile, introduced NENA, its VRA, in honor of Carmen Binglasan Consing, the first and so far the only woman representative of Capiz to the lower house. Now, indeed, simple activities like this may be used as a tool for cultural awareness. Now, as the pandemic goes on like forever, libraries learn how to cope and from in-person to the State University main campus library partners with other agencies to organize and host webinars aimed at boosting literacy, storytelling, cultural heritage awareness among Capiznons, and even individuals from outside the province who intend to learn. And actually, webinars have broken barriers because usually when we have the in-person or face-to-face seminars before, it is geographically limiting because if we host a seminar here in Capiz, only the participants from Capiz could attend. But now we have more than 500, I think 400 participants who have registered for this webinar coming from and even have restaurants and our webinars have broken barrier in terms of education. Now, another interesting activity to boost cultural awareness in your communities is through storytelling. Now, I will cite, I think, the most popular storyteller who happens to be a librarian is Ma'am Melay of the NLP. Now, storytelling is a cultural practice of sharing stories with others. Storytelling serves the purpose of entertainment, cultural preservation, and most importantly, instilling lessons and moral values. Melanie Ramirez of the National Library of the Philippines is a role model of a librarian whose passion for storytelling serves as a tool towards cultural literacy and literacy as a whole. She believes that creative storytelling helps children widen their imagination and get better perspectives in life. This motivates her to pursue her passion as a cuentista to street children, alongside being a librarian at the National Library of the Philippines. Stories contain the wisdom of the world. It teaches us cultural values. Story builds community, celebrates cultural diversity, and preserves cultural identity. Where truth has been suppressed, story is an instrument of epiphany. Story builds literacy skills and develops metaphorical understanding. That is according to McCollum, Maldonado, and Baltz in 2014. Now, the notion of libraries as a mere repository of books and manuscripts is already an antiquated definition of what a library is. On the other hand, the idea that a librarian is only as good as stamping books, lending books, and receiving returned books, or, well, silencing customers who are noisy, is already a perception that's so 20th century. In fact, librarians now step up as active agents in documenting cultural heritage and on taking active roles in literacy, heritage work, and many more. Now, allow me to share with you some of my insights based on my experience as I joined a team which documented traditional fishing practices in 2017. Now, another library staff of mine and myself joined a team of academe who became part of a group for a project by the National Commission for Culture and the Arts, which documented traditional fishing methods and practices in northern Panay Island or communities facing the Sibuyan Sea. It was an enriching opportunity for us since it allowed us to immerse with different fishing and coastal communities in Capiz and in other communities. We experienced different cultures. We were exposed on folk beliefs and different narratives, lives, experiences, and stories of different people and different lives. Now, in the end, we were able to document 52 traditional fishing methods and practices, and we were able to release a video documentation for educational use. Now, an offshoot of this project came in 2019 when we did an exhibition in partnership with Ang Panoblion Museum, which allowed us to pay homage to the fisher folks, the culture bearers in fishing communities. And this was also an opportunity to share fishing gears and artifacts from fishing communities, as well as works of art of local artists. And it allowed us also to reach out to a greater number of Capiznons and create awareness about this intangible heritage, which we are afraid are also vanishing, since a lot of younger generation find disinterest in traditional fishing and instead opt for taking up other professions. Now, digitizing documents and digital curation is another activity that you might also consider as a part of cultural advocacy. Digitizing documents not only preserve the information contained within a document, it also enables access to this information. Now, according to DigiCult, digitization contributes to the conservation and preservation of heritage and scientific resources. It creates new educational opportunities, and it can be used to encourage tourism, and it provides ways of improving access by the citizen to their patrimony. Now, I'd like to cite a good example here of a digital repository from the Cordillera Administrative Region. This is the database of the Benguet State University Library. Hi, Sir Lauren, if you're watching. This is a good example of digitizing and making digitized materials available for researchers who are into indigenous studies and local studies research. Now, this database contains digitized reference materials on indigenous knowledge systems and practices in the Cordillera region. Using an open source system and open access principle, the database serves as a repository for the advancement of human knowledge and promotion of indigenous knowledge and practices in the Cordillera. Now, hello, Sir Stephen. These are libraries, and in Iloilo, we have the CIFDEC Aquaculture Department Institutional Repository, which is a pioneer in digitizing collections and making them available to the public. Now, the repository of CIFDEC, also called as SAIR, contains a wealth of reference materials and researchers, especially if you are researching about fishing, maritime research, and aquaculture. Now, you also discover that it is a huge go-to source when you're looking for traditional fishing methods, traditional fishing practices, no? And other researchers related to knowledge system and practices related to fishing. Full text digitized copies of fish farmer-friendly materials can be retrieved and downloaded from this database. Now, if you are interested of furthering research on history, culture, and other disciplines, these databases are very helpful. You try to consult. I try to consult these databases every now and then. Archive.org, Project Gutenberg, Google Book. Yes, Google Book has full text ebooks, especially dating back from the 18th, 19th, and early 20th century, or those books which the copyright of which have already lapsed. The Biblioteca Nacional de España, Trove from the National Library of Australia, and the Library of Congress. These are some of the digital libraries that are worth exploring. Now, another interesting aspect for librarians and libraries that they may consider exploring is also writing and publishing relevant reading materials, such as, for example, your library may endeavor to document traditional folk tales and legends in your locality. Now, try to step up a little. You might also want to consider publishing it and making them available to the public. And and you do a great job in supporting teachers who are looking for local materials in teaching, in the contextualization and localization of education. So you have local histories, folk tales and legends, illustrated books, chapbooks, and zines that you might as well consider writing and publishing. Okay. So I think we're now drawing nearer to my presentation's end. Now, culture is an endless source of inspiration in whatever endeavor one wants to take. For every cultural worker, whether you're a librarian, you're a teacher, you're a writer, you're a dancer, you're a singer, you're a performer, you're an artist, drawing on one's culture and heritage is an opportunity to popularize and disseminate our rich traditions to the younger generation, who more often than not get absorbed into foreign culture. While reading popular literature, savoring international fare, or singing foreign songs are not wrong at all, one should not also forget that our stories are as colorful as theirs. Our food are as other. Imagination is as creative as any other citizen's imagination. Librarians and teachers and other cultural workers, or any one of us, are in a great position to effect cultural advocacy and literacy to fellow professionals, the younger generation, and the community, so we could rise up and embrace our own culture and heritage as Filipinos. Now, Nick Joaquin once said, identity is the history that has gone into the bone and blood and reshaped the flesh. Identity is not what we were, but what we have become, what we are at the moment. But whatever identity we have at the moment, let us remember that it is the product of our culture and heritage. And as we continue to shape a sustainable future for our culture, for our heritage, for our education, allow me to end this presentation with this quote from my favorite author, Feliz Prudente Santa Maria. Every generation inherently shapes in culture, decides how it chooses to live, and if it seeks to stand for anything that moves civilization forward. There is a great potential in the human spirit to excel, and that is every person is a gem of a creation. Now, always hopeful, because indeed people can improve the future. Happy Heritage Month, everyone. Thank you. Back to you, moderator.
Thank you so much, Sir Christian. That was really meaningful and incredibly insightful. And some of the things that we have learned is that culture is actually a way of life that society follows. And I personally have learned that we all have a part to take on in preserving our history and our culture. And that affects our present and future as well.
By the way, yeah, to our participants here, if you're interested to have a copy of my lecture notes, it's actually a 10-page lecture note. I think our moderator here will share the link from where you could download the lecture note. I think you could use it as a simple reference for your or readings for your research later on.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. That's so generous of you. Yes, we will in fact post the link both in the chat box and also in the comment section. So before we play a game to take a little bit of a break, I would like to request everybody to please open your camera and let us take this opportunity for to take a photo so that we will be able to document this moment well. Again, thank you so much, Sir Christian. Very insightful presentation that you have given us this afternoon. Everyone, let's open our cameras. Wala ko po in screen. There you go. Everybody, please smile. Next page. Next. And last one. Thank you so much. And now it's time to play a game. So we will be flashing questions in our screen, and whoever gives the right question first will win a prize. Write your answers in our chat box for our Zoom participants and at the comment section for our Facebook Live viewers. Are you ready? Here's for question number 1. Name 2 Capisnon national artists. Name 2 Capisnon national artists. You can just type in your answers in our chat box or the comment section. Question number 2. What is the name of this heritage structure that was once a water tank and now a museum? What is the name of this heritage structure that was once a water tank and now a museum? Clue, it can actually be found here in Rojas City, Capiz. So just type in your answers in our chat box and in the comment section. Here we go. Are you ready for the third and last question? So this is your last chance to win. Question number 3. Question number 3. Name the 2 indigenous peoples in the province of Capiz. Again, name the 2 indigenous peoples in the province of Capiz. So we have a lot of indigenous people group, but which 2 can be found here in the province of Capiz? Answers are coming, and All right, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for your participation. And to all the winners, we will notify you after this webinar on how to claim your prizes. I'm sure that we have learned a lot from this presentation of Sir Acevedo. At this moment, the floor is open for your questions. So just type in your questions in our chat box or in the comment section. And I think we can accommodate at least 5 questions about this topic today. And we will be getting questions from both Zoom chat box and also from Facebook Live comments. If you have any questions that you have written down during the presentation of Sir Christian George, you can just type it in our chat box and we will be reading that. Also in the comments section in the Facebook Live. Is there anything that you would want to clarify or you would want to ask Sir Christian while he is still with us? Okay, some are still answering the questions that we have given earlier. Or if you want to unmute, you can also ask, you can also unmute. So go, we have a question here. Sir Christian, how do we classify and consider a certain property if it's a cultural heritage?
Hello. Yes. Good afternoon again. Well, it really, basically, we have the classification, we have the standards set by the Republic Act 10066, right? So it's being, I think it should start with the cultural mapping initiative of a community. So the cultural mapping, there you will find what are the significant local cultural properties, and then it should be enacted by the Sangguniang Bayan, Sangguniang Panlungsod, or Sangguniang Panlalawigan, just like what the province of Capiz has been doing with its many tangible and intangible cultural properties here. And then, for example, if you want a national historical marker, for example, to be placed in a property or in a landmark, for example, you need first it to be included in your registry of cultural properties in your locality, and then of course, I think that's where it all begins. So it will be assessed, it will be evaluated, and there are requirements as well to be accomplished. But basically, if the property falls under the criteria set by RA 10066, such as at least if it is 50 years old, a structure that is 50 years old and has a significant at least cultural significance in the community, then it could be considered a presumed cultural property. Or if the Sanggunian declares it as valuable to the local history or culture of the community, then it could be declared a local cultural property. But again, I could not emphasize the importance of the local government implementing a cultural mapping initiative, because that's where it all begins.
There. Thank you so much, Sir Christian. I don't think we have any more questions. It only tells that we have actually learned a lot, and it's very clear from your presentation. So
thank you.
We would like to thank you for being with us, for generously sharing your expertise and your knowledge to everyone here.
And don't
So
forget
for,
the link
yes, sir,
kasi
I will
gusto
be,
nila mag-download.
yeah, the link for the presentation will actually be posted in the chat box and also in the Zoom comment section. Later part in the later part of this webinar, will actually be with the evaluation form. Okay. So that was indeed a meaningful exchange of ideas. So at this point of time, we would like to call Mr. Alfonso Tesoro, the Provincial Tourism and Cultural Affairs Officer of the Province of Capiz, for the presentation of a certificate to our resource speaker. Sir Al?
Thank you, Hazel. Thank you to all our participants and of course to our resource person this afternoon who has been helping us and was also instrumental in the setting up of the Capiz Provincial Library. So the certificate of recognition reads, Province of Capiz, Philippines, certificate of recognition is presented to Christian George F. Acevedo for his valuable time, knowledge, and expertise as resource person during the webinar series in celebration of the National Heritage Month 2021 on the topic Libraries and Cultural Heritage, held on May 28, 2021 via Zoom online platform. Given this 28th day of May 2021 in Rojas City, Capiz, Philippines. Signed, Alfonso D. Tesoro, Provincial Tourism and Cultural Affairs Officer. Esteban Evan D. Contreras, Governor. Thank you so much, Sir Christian, and congratulations.
Thank you, Sir Al.
There. Thank you again, Sir Christian. And yes, for those interested to have a copy of the presentation that we have just seen today, the link is already here in Zoom and will also be posted in the comment section of Facebook. So thank you so much, Sir Al and Sir Christian, for heeding our call. We are so honored today. Sir Christian, is there anything else that you would like to share before we end this webinar?
Well, first and foremost, thank you very much to the provincial government of Capiz, the Provincial Tourism and Cultural Affairs Office, and the Provincial Library of Capiz for this opportunity to share with you my insights and experiences as a librarian, as an educator, and as a cultural worker. And also thank you very much to our participants for staying with us for 1.5 hours and for listening to my lengthy presentation. And I hope that you will start to reconsider as well taking on heritage advocacy as one of your advocacies in your respective communities. Thank you very much.
So ladies and gentlemen, let us once again give a virtual applause to Sir Christian George Acevedo. To our participants, both in Zoom and Facebook Live, thank you for being here today. Your presence made this event a memorable one. And after this, we will be flashing a QR code and we'll be sending a link that will lead you to the evaluation form. And only those who have submitted their duly filled out evaluation forms will be able to claim their e-certificate for this webinar. So, yeah, take a screenshot of this QR code, and also we will be sending the link so that you will be accessed the evaluation form. It is posted in the chat box for the Zoom participants, and for the Facebook Live viewers, it is posted in our comment section. So again, thank you so much for being here with us. I hope that what we have learned will um, actually give us a boost to act on preserving our history, culture, and heritage. And we are to be proud of what we have. So again, thank you so much. Keep safe and have a good day.
O Pilipinas, o Pilipinas. Sama-sama tayo't ating balikan mga kwento ng pamana ang ating kasaysayan. O Pilipinas, ating lahat. O Pilipinas, o Pilipinas, o Pilipinas. Sama-sama tayo't ating balikan. O Pilipinas.